Syracuse with a chance to be 4-0 after today. All very exciting. Please, I hope you're going to be there inside the JMA Dome tonight, 7 p.m. Friday Night Lights. The whole country is watching Syracuse trying to get a win over Virginia. We'll talk about it on Locked On Syracuse. It's right now.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine with you on Friday. It's game day. Rarely do we get to do a pod on game day, so this is a little bit extra exciting for us. Thanks for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, and we're talking about Syracuse's upcoming matchup against Virginia tonight inside the JMA Dome at 7 p.m. Please, if you're in the Syracuse area, pack the Dome. The whole country has a chance to see what Orange Nation has to offer. We're hoping that first digit is a 4 when they talk about attendance, and we're not talking 4,000. So let's talk about this game. We kind of did a little bit of recon yesterday with our interview. We prefaced what Virginia is as a team the day before that. Now we're going to kind of put those two things together with the things we'd like to see in this game from Syracuse. First one I'll start is I want to see Damien Alford catch more than one pass. He's only caught one pass the entire season, and that was the dot that Garrett Schroeder threw to him in the UConn game that really looked what the closest thing to an NFL pass I think Schrader has ever thrown in a Syracuse uniform.
A
So
dime.
yeah, I mean, that was a really, really good pass. And against Purdue, Alford had a really great catch. His whole foot just wasn't in bounds, so it didn't count. I truly do believe that Alford is the most talented receiver on the team. I really think, combined with his body and his ability to just moss receivers or corners, excuse me, he's fantastic, and he can really be that number one and go up and get those balls and be that clutch guy, and maybe even move aside into that spot that Isaiah Jones maybe is left now that he's out for the season. So I want to see Alford go out there and be a problem against the Virginia secondary and give Schrader targets all game so he doesn't have to run it every single play. I like when Schrader runs the ball because oftentimes it's a large chunk gain or it's a first down, but I like 47-yard touchdowns more, which is what Alford's given us in one catch this season.
Yeah, I think I see Alford slotting into that Isaiah Jones role a lot more than I see, him slotting in as a wide receiver one. When all is said and done, I'm not as high on him as you are, but I don't want to say that as a knock on him by any means. I think this is sort of that game where you can sort of see, is Damien Alford going to be able to make that switch into what is in theory a more involved role with more targets, more receptions, and it's going to be hard to keep the yards per catch where it is right now, but be able to be a big play type guy and get out there and, as you were saying, moss a cornerback and just make a big reception, have those big plays. I think that's something that I would love to see him do. I don't see him, once again, I'm not sold on him being a wide receiver one by any means, but this week, filling in, I guess, into that Isaiah Jones type role where you're not the primary receiver heading out for this entire game, but you're going to get a couple of opportunities. And if you can maximize those opportunities, that's something that I'd be eager to watch and see progress through the rest of this season. So I think that's a perfect sort of what you want to see and, get involved for Damien Alford, catch the ball a couple of times. If it's a big play, I think that buys into your ability and all of that sort of argument that you have for his sort of true potential. But if they're not big plays and he is just a presence getting a couple of catches now, I think that's a really good stepping stone for what his role could be the rest of the way.
Yeah, I respect that. And when you have the rest of the receiver core being as good as it is, with Aronde Gatson, of course, kind of stepping up last week, having the Aronde game where he pretty much saved the day with that last second touchdown and a touchdown earlier in that game. He is obviously going to be in the mix there. He's obviously the tight end slash slot guy. But then there's also Devon Cooper and Courtney Jackson. So he's got competition. I just think Damien is too talented not to use.
That's fair. I agree with you there. And I'm excited for, as I was saying, I am excited for this week to see with this sort of shakeup in the wide receiver room, how his role, how his targets, how his numbers sort of shift up this week. Because I do think he definitely has the capabilities to be utilized way more than we're seeing him utilized right
What do you
now.
got?
We ready to move on? I want to share.
What do you got?
Awesome. I want to see the Sean Tucker, I'm going to say breakout game, but explosion game. I guess not breakout game, the re-explosion game. His week 1, I loved everything that he did. That obviously screen pass where he breaks free, and it was just a full, this is what we thought we were getting this year. You've got 2 weeks ago against UConn, I'm kind of pleased with my performance of 112 yards on what do you have 27 attempts, so a little more than 3 yards a carry there. And then last week was not what we're traditionally used to seeing out of him, and he's going for about 2 and change per carry, 18 attempts for 42 yards. I understand he is the focal point of defenses. That is what your goal is, to stop him because of how he has gotten his fill for so long and so frequently in his time as the RB1 with Syracuse. I want to see that explosion one more time. I want 140 at least in terms of total yards, a score. I'd even bump that to 2 scores to really consider it an explosion game. But I want to see him come out and do what we know he can do again, just because I've sort of seen these last 2 weeks, and it's a good sign that Syracuse has been successful, even though he has not necessarily been as successful. I would love to see Sean have a week this week where, even though you're still the focal point of the defense and you are still the priority one is to shut down Sean Tucker, I would love to see him get his fill, sort of get back in that rhythm and have a game like in week 1 and like all of last season that we just got, so used to seeing him play at that level.
Yeah, we really haven't seen him do it since game 1 this year, because game 2 he was fine. I mean, honestly, the stats are better than I remember the game. He rushed for 112 yards on 27 carries, which is
Yeah.
over 4 yards per carry, which is
Was my math
fantastic,
that
but maybe
off?
not. What?
I think I said 3. So I'm glad it's 4. That's a better number.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, well, that's big. And then in game 1, of course, he had 2 touchdowns, one on the ground, one through the air, 14
Yeah.
yards per catch, almost 5 yards per carry. So that's more of the Sean Tucker that we're all used to. So I'm right there with you on that as well. I want to see Sean come out, and so does the rest of Orange Nation, because when you buy your ticket, that's kind of what you're paying for, is to watch
Yeah.
Sean Tucker just absolutely tarnish defenses. So you, me, and the rest of Syracuse fandom looking for Sean Tucker to explode against another defense in Virginia this week. All right, we're going to get to some questions we have heading into this game right after this ad from Underdog Fantasy. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up college football this year. You can make a pick 'em for this weekend. Take something like Drake May from UNC, higher than 245 or 254.5 passing yards against Notre Dame. You could take Drew Pine, the opposing quarterback, lower than 217 in the half. Or how about Louisville quarterback? Somebody Syracuse has seen over 95 yards and a half, or over 95.5 rushing yards. Anything like that works. It's easy to play, available in over 30 states. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any team, not just your team, and decide if they will finish higher or lower. One of the easiest fantasy to play games out there, and you can win cold hard cash in a single game. Sign up with the promo code Locked On, and that's one word, Locked On, And Underdog will double your first deposit to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On. Again, one word, Locked On. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. Okay, Owen. We continue here on Locked On Syracuse. Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine breaking down Syracuse, Virginia game night tonight. Very exciting. We got a couple questions. One from me, one from Owen going into this game. And if you have questions, email us losyracuse44@gmail.com. We did get one email, which we'll cover on Tuesday. But hey, email us if you've got questions heading into games you want answered. We're happy to answer it on the pod or just email you back. So we'd love to see you. And if you're not following us on Twitter, at LO_Syracuse for that. But hey, let's talk questions going into this game. Mine is, which Garrett Schroeder are we going to get against Virginia? He has been fantastic this season. That's undeniable. But in games 1 and 2, it's also undeniable that he was far better than he was in this most recent game against Purdue. It seemed like in the last game we got 2021 Schrader, and that's how I felt about him. And I think about our whoa, I think that's how everybody else felt about him too. Schrader in the last game, 181 yards, 3 touchdowns, 83 rush yards, almost 5 yards a carry. So he wasn't bad, but he wasn't what he was in the first 2 games. And let's face it, he was never going to be that all season long. But I think I and probably everybody else hoped that he would find a happy medium to what he gave us against Purdue compared to what he gave us in the first 2 games. He also did say in the post-game press conference that he was dealing with personal issues. So I mean, that's always going to make a difference. But
Yeah.
he also said he wasn't ready to play, and it was on him. So hopefully he comes out on Friday tonight and is ready to play. But I think if Syracuse, obviously a quarterback is the most important part of any team. But if Syracuse can get at least half of what they got out of Schrader, maybe 75% out of what they got from him in the first 2 games, I think they're going to win a lot of football games this year. And if
Oh
he
yeah.
comes out tonight and is fantastic once again and is running that offense really well and leading guys on passes instead of throwing them short, their offense is going to be running really, really well. So I'm looking for Schrader to have a good game, but at the same time, I'm curious as to who we're going to see, because I think there's also a level of what if he isn't that good tonight. If he's 21-20, or excuse me, if he's 2021 Schrader again tonight, is that what we're going to get for the rest of the year? Because at that point, it's 2 games of great, 2 games of not so great. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I know last week on our Friday episode when we discussed this, I said I was 80% sold on Schrader. And then I think Monday or Tuesday we returned and I said I'm 60% sold on Schrader after that switch. I think 60, 65 is that number for me right now. I'm still, I think above 50% is very much a positive right now, especially compared to what I was thinking end of last season, even through week 1, heading into this year. So he is still, I guess, yes, he's trending downward because of last week's performance, but still trending up compared to what I was thinking in preseason camp and all up until those first snaps, week 1 in the Dome against Louisville. So I'm still on the up and up with him and sold right now for the most part. But this is a really, really telling week. And as you say, what Schrader is going to show up in this game. 2021 Schrader was, just miserable, like to watch. It was not fun. It was not entertaining. It was tedious. And yes, that
There
has a
was
lot to do
tedious.
with
That's a
a
good way to put it.
struggling line, struggling play calling, right? We talk about the lack of tight end usage, the lack of men in motion. Seems like every week now we get a Mike Glennon video on Twitter talking about how awesome Syracuse's results have been by putting men in motion. So this is going to be better by all means for Schrader, but we saw last week it was not the same guy throwing the ball, it looked like, and it seemed like he just wasn't right there, missing throws, not timing perfectly, just not making the decisions that it seemed like in weeks 1 and 2 he was able to make much easier and much more effectively. So to see the decision-making take that dip last week brought some questions as well. I think this is going to be a different Schrader, back to, more similar to weeks 1 and 2.
Okay,
Can
I'm
we
glad
ask
you're
for
high on him.
week 1 and 2 Schrader every week to be that exact level? I don't think so. But if he can come out and ball out for a while in this game and play to the level or close to the level that we saw him early on, outside of last week, I think this is very much a continued rise in terms of my confidence meter in Garrett Schrader.
All right, I like that. What's your question?
My question is, how does Garrett Williams show up against another top receiver this week? Last week, a really, really tall task and produced Charlie Jones, who got his fill matched up against Garrett Williams by all means.
So good, dude.
188 yards and a
So good.
touchdown. Especially it seemed late in that fourth quarter, in the second half, it seemed like Charlie Jones was having his way on Garrett Williams. That is not to say that Williams played a god awful game by any means. He got
He
his
did
fill
get toasted a
occasionally,
couple times, though.
but he did. He got burnt a couple of times in single coverage, and that is sort of what you're looking at. I mean, I'll give him the nod. He had 2 pass breakups, so he made a couple of plays in this game. It was just a couple of moments, and you don't want it to happen, but it can happen when you're playing the level of receiver talent that you saw in Charlie Jones last week. So I want to see, you're playing another top tier receiver this week in Keaton Thompson with Virginia. How do you show out this time around in one-on-one coverage, in just, this entire game as a whole? I would love to see him rise up to the occasion and say, you know what, that last week getting burnt once or twice, that's not what we're going to do. That's not what is me. That is not the Garrett Williams way, and play some lockdown on Keaton Thompson. It is interesting. Babers was talking about Thompson in the press conference this week and talking about how just difficult he is to guard. And I think he said, we don't have anyone that can jump with him. So those, especially in red zone territory and, a 50-50 ball up in the air, that is where I think Thompson has the edge. But I think in coverage early on, I think Williams has that sort of earlier edge where he can lock down for a little bit longer at least. So this is sort of my big question. I would love to see him bounce back and play a really, really solid game and lock up one of, as we talked about, 3 pretty solid Virginia receiving threats. If he can do his job on one side, I'm confident in Deuce on the other side. And I think that it is going to continue to be a very, very difficult situation for Brennan Armstrong to make that jump from a struggling first couple of weeks to having a really strong performance against Syracuse is going to be all but impossible if Williams and Deuce are doing their jobs on the wide receiver 1 and 2.
Yeah, and Keaton's got 4 inches on Garrett. Keaton
Yeah.
is 6'4", 215. Garrett Williams 6', 190. So he's just a bigger human being. And I mean, I think a lot of their game plan is going to be going to Keaton. I mean, they saw what Charlie Jones did to Garrett last week. And don't get me wrong, I think Garrett played better than a lot of people gave him credit, just because
Yes.
Syracuse is a team that is always going to leave you on an island. Like, if you want to go and play in college football and be on an island and there's no help, go to Syracuse University. That's what you're going to get. You're going to be a lone corner. It's just, that's what happens. We're DBU. It's just how it works. But with that comes getting burned sometimes,
Yes.
and that's exactly what Charlie Jones did. He went out there and he showed that he's an NFL player. And Keaton Thompson has a great NFL body, and if he goes out there and Brennan Armstrong throws jump balls, it's going to be tough to guard him. I think Garrett's really, really talented. I think he deserves to be the number 1 on the team and everything, but I also think that Keaton could make a statement in this game. So we'll see. I still have faith in Garrett, and I think that he's going to play really well, but you got to be wary of what Keaton can do.
100%.
Okay.
I think that's what we'll be looking for, and that's why it's highlighted as my question right now. How can you bounce back after a week that, even though you weren't terrible, you were not at your best because you got burnt a couple of times?
Yeah. Alrighty, let's get to some keys and predictions for this game. I'll start my key for this game, and we kind of heard a little bit from this about this from Greg Medea yesterday, who told us that there are, I think I asked, what has been Armstrong's trouble or whatever. I don't know, something like that. And he said he just can't, he has no protection. The O line's killing him. And I think that you got to keep him uncomfortable. My key is to get him to be uncomfortable all game long. They couldn't put up a touchdown against the Fighting Illini, the Fighting Tommy DeVitos. If they couldn't put a touchdown against Illinois, they shouldn't be able to score a touchdown against Syracuse. Syracuse's defensive line has an opportunity in this game to make a statement and really put up a solid performance. I think if they're going to win this game, it's going to be because guys like Jatius Gear, Terry Lockett, not the Seahawks wide receiver, Terry Lockett and Caleb Okechukwu are in the backfield plenty, and really making Brennan Armstrong uncomfortable inside the dome. So keep Brennan Armstrong uncomfortable is my key to victory in this one for Syracuse.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. If you can continue to put pressure on him, it's going to make his day very difficult. And that is something that Greg Medea said the other day, or Medea said the other day, is that with, I believe it was 5 new O linemen this year, he can be under pressure consistently. He has been under pressure consistently. So if Syracuse can bring the pressure, he is going to have a very difficult day. I'm flipping the script here. It is, I said the opposite, kind of. And my key to this game is to protect Garrett Schroeder, give him time, let him make quality decisions, keep him safe from pressure. We were talking earlier about, I think it might have been a PFF stat that was talking about how, Schrader, when not under pressure, has been absolutely incredible in terms of, completion
Yeah.
percentage and efficiency and all of that stuff. And it sort of goes out the table when he is under pressure. If you can keep him safe to go through the progressions, to make the best decisions possible, he is going to, I think, be able to pick apart a defense from Virginia that has played decent so far, but also hasn't really been tested all too much. And I think if you can give Schrader some time, he will be able to pick apart and get his fill in this game for sure.
Yeah, I like that one from you. What's your prediction?
I'm back and forth on this one. I've changed up a number of times, and I feel like I lead with that every week, but I really do. It's a work in progress to get to my final number. And I don't want to stick. I'm at whole numbers right now, and after last week where I witnessed non-whole numbers, it's shaken me up a little bit. But I'm gonna stick to the whole numbers. I think I have Syracuse 31-17 in this. I think they win this comfortably. I would assume I'll go detail. I'm saying it's 31-10, and Virginia gets a late score to bump to 31-17. So I don't think it's a 2-score game. I think it's a 3-score game in that fourth. Maybe Virginia snags one towards the end. I don't see them blowing them out completely, even though there is definitely a chance that Syracuse can do that in this game. But I do think that when you're playing a guy like Brennan Armstrong with the wide receiver options that they have, my key last week was to avoid breakout plays. It could have been the same week or for this week just because of the way this offense is. When you've got guys that are struggling but still have that skill and that flash ability, I guess, they are definitely able to do that. And I think I'm going with 17 because they can break out for that big play. So 31-17 for you betting. I believe that's a Syracuse cover and the under by 4 or 5 points in terms of the total there. So take that for what it's worth.
I am going to bank on the Syracuse defense and follow my key a little bit, and I'm going to predict Syracuse. I don't know if this counts as blows them out, but it's a rather large margin of victory. I'm going to go, hold on, I got to make sure the math works. I'm going to go 31-7 in this game. I think Syracuse pulls off a pretty large win, one that beckons back a little bit to the Florida State win in, I think it was week 4 of 2018. So that's what I'm
Oh,
going
yeah.
with. Florida State was 37. But that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go 31-7.
Yes, I like that. I think I have a picture of me in that game. Hold on.
I
See if I can
remember
get to it
that was one
instantly.
of the first games I got to watch as a freshman in the Dome, and I'll just never, because everybody thought Florida State was going to come in the Dome and beat Syracuse because they're Florida State and they were still kind of riding the coattails. Look at you and Will Scott, love that.
Mm-hmm.
And then
They made
DeAndre
the paper.
Francois just got killed.
They made the paper.
So
It was probably 3,000 degrees in the Dome that day. I remember.
yeah,
That.
it was hot. That was
I'm
hot.
actually still sweating from that afternoon. It was disgusting. But I walked in and I purchased 4 bottles of water, and I brought
That's
it
the kind
down
of
to
day
my
it
seat.
was.
And it was that hot. Doesn't look like it's going to be that hot tomorrow night, but maybe with a packed dome, you put the air conditioning to the test, and it could get a little hot in there. Who knows? I am confident in this Syracuse team for this game. I am confident in the Syracuse faithful to show out. It's a 6:00 Friday night game, right?
It's
This
not 7.
is
I've been saying 7 the whole
no.
time.
I'm 90% sure they bumped it to 6.
Oh,
No,
I
it's
must have
7.
missed that.
I blotched.
Okay. That's
Either
good.
way, what's an hour difference? Get there an hour early, tailgate for a little bit, meet some new people, and walk in and have some fun. Cheer on the Orange, get loud. As we learned yesterday, Virginia is preparing for noise.
Who
I don't think
cares?
they're going to be prepared for the
They
noise
have
that
no
they're
idea
about to
what's
deal with.
coming.
No.
All right. Well, that does it for today's episode of Locked On Syracuse. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. Go get more on the ACC by making Locked On ACC your second listen every day. Host Candace Cooper and the local experts of Locked On take you across the ACC in 30 minutes. Make Locked On ACC your second listen. That is Locked On ACC. I'm Matt Bonaparte. That's Owen Valentine. We will see you on Monday to recap what is hopefully a Syracuse victory.